Good morning, Free League Channel. I am Judge Wolf of Tabletop Anthologies, and today is a pretty awesome day for us. We're going to be running our Aliens Ataegina game after a little introduction. Before we talk about that, I'd like to reintroduce my players. From Tabletop Anthologies, I have Dionysus.
Good day.
Playing Dionysus. I have Severian playing Alistair.
Morning.
And I have Anthony playing Alexio.
Hello.
And as always, we are very, 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 very happy to have Diesel Shot with us. They always make us look that much better, especially Pat. Pat is playing Dionysus, by the way. Andromede. Okay, Andromede, remember. All right.
The mighty.
And we have Lee playing Sumbat.
Good evening, gamers.
And today's a pretty freaking awesome day for me. So the game that we're playing is based off a book called Alien Phalanx. It was written by Scott Sigler, who you can see over here on the right. Scott is a New York Times best-selling novelist with 18 novels, or as he says, it starts to get fuzzy after 10. 6 novellas and dozens of short stories. Several series running. One of the things that I'll be mentioning in a little bit, he does have a podcast at scottsigler.com/subscribe. I'll throw that up into the Twitch window here in a little bit. Once again, where he serializes his books. 20 minutes on Sundays, and it's free every Sunday. And how long have you been doing that, Scott? 15 years, right?
We've been doing that 15 and a half years now. It's starting to get...
Nice.
I just revealed my Michigan there, 15 and a half years. But, yeah. When I get to doing it for 2 decades, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm going to flip out.
First off, I want to thank you for coming on the show because, you have tons of novels out there. You're an inspiration to other writers who want to get out there and, get some writing done. But I think one of the major reasons why we are happy to have you here is the aliens contribution. So not only did you write you contributed to Alien Bug Hunt, for anybody who has read that, The Dangerous Prey, which is the story told from the Xenos point of view. And like I said, the novel that we're basing this whole game off of, which is Alien Phalanx. So I'm going to leave the chat open for questions. Dion and Sev, if you could keep a watch on that, see if anything interesting comes up. I'd like to ask the first one, though, if that's okay.
Can do. Yeah. Lead the way.
So I want to know what inspired the whole idea of Bronze Age versus Xenomorph, because that's quite a mix-up.
When Steve Saffel from Titan Publishing approached me to do this, of course, I fanboyed out immediately. This is my all-time favorite franchise. I would say that the original movie Aliens is one of the reasons I am a novelist, a successful novelist, because the structure of that has always blown me away from just, aside from the acting and the special effects, the craft perspective of the overlapping arcs of intensity. So I watched it, I'm going to guess, over 200 times, and it's a big part of my friend group from high school. It's just nonstop quotes for that thing. I've been dropping quotes from Alien and Aliens into all of my books as regular dialogue for forever. So just little Easter eggs in there. So, but when they approached and want to do this, I've consumed a lot of the Aliens franchise, and some of the story themes started to get a little bit repetitive to me. The structure, this pathogen is loose on the ship. We have to get to some kind of escape vehicle, get off the ship, blow up the ship. Is kind of it's part and parcel of the story. So I was like, I racked my brain to come up with something different, and the medieval concept came up. And there's a Dark Horse comic book where Vikings versus aliens, and I hadn't seen that at that point. So when I thought about this, if there's a way to accommodate for the acid in the aliens, what would be the ideal defensive structure, or how would you fight them? And also being a fan of, there's a book by Mike Cole called Legion versus Phalanx, which outlines when the Phalanx was the dominant military force in the world, and the Legions kind of took them on in 5 key battles. And as I was reading that, looking at other things, the concept of the Shiltron, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. The Phalanx that is a circle came up. I'm like, oh, okay. If you had the right kind of defense and the right kind of armor, you could succeed against a giant horde of aliens. So that was a big part of the research. I sent, I'm gonna guess, 10 fleshed out novel ideas to Steve to pick from, and that was the one he gravitated to right away.
I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I saw it on the read list that is coming out on Amazon, I was like, spears? Is this and then I thought, is this like a Warhammer 40K Night World? Are we talking about like? And then I was like, well, let's give it a read. I actually really enjoy. I mean, obviously we're writing a game about, or not writing a game, but we're playing a game about it, so it was very enjoyable. I'm kind of curious. What do you think? Without my players, by the way, most of them haven't read at least as far, and they don't have an idea of how they can protect themselves yet against.
Got it.
But how long do you think a
Strength,
spear? How long do you think a spear normally would last against a xenomorph if it was able to puncture the carapace?
It would be gone immediately based on the structures that they have put in there. So that was a primary focal point of the book. And when the early reviews came out, and by early reviews I mean before anyone had read anything, Titan
This can't happen.
Titan Publishing kind of leaned too far into the medieval angle for the marketing, because medieval doesn't come for centuries later than the influence for this book, and the blowback from the diehard Aliens franchise fan base was pretty bad, and it was a lot of questions just like that. The biggest one was like, horses against xenomorphs? I don't think so, bro. And like, you're like, well, I see your point. If there were horses in the book, that would be a bad idea. But it obviously, with the structures set up for the xenomorphs, there's very little you can do in a hand-to-hand combat situation that you're not going to suffer 3 to 5 to 10 to 1 fatalities if you can even take one down at all. So it working that into the plot line was the key. How to create a construct where the structure of spears actually could have a chance of survivability for the characters.
That's awesome. I had a moment of clarity the other day whenever we were playing last week. One of my players said, are there any large predators around, right? Like, is there any animals we need to worry about while we're on watch? Because I make them set up watches at night. And I was like, well, there wasn't any in the book. And then I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why wasn't there? And then it's like, why wouldn't there be? Because there probably, if there were any on this area, there would be in Black Smoke Mountain right now. So the last thing I wanted to ask before I started letting other folks, because I'm sorry, I'm trying not to fanboy and it's really hard. Is there a reason why you chose a strong female lead? I was happy with that. I was very, a lot of times that's missing in stories, but it's always great to see a strong female lead. So was there a particular reason why?
Well, Sigourney Weaver is the reason this franchise has endured for so long. There's a lot of great elements to it, and I think it would have been an amazing. Alien would have been an amazing movie. Aliens would have been an amazing movie. But she was the rock star continuity that carried it through. And I've been a huge fan because before this conversation of strong female lead or strong female character even was called that, you already had Sigourney Weaver out there. And I'm a big fan of the Aliens franchise from the perspective of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Great show. Buffy's got crazy superpowers and can defeat anything she comes across. In Aliens, these are normal human beings finding a way for someone who's not a trained combatant like Sigourney. It wasn't like all of a sudden she mutates up and takes these things on, and Superman type situation. She has to work with the tools that she's got. And then when you go from Alien to Aliens and she's surrounded by trained killers, she's still the one that pulls it through. So and then the giant cardinal sin that the franchise ever committed was killing Newt before Newt had a chance to become a bad motherfucker. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Say
It's a not safe for work
Oh, we
stream.
curse.
Yes,
Curse on this channel.
yes, and especially when Newt and Hicks are brought up.
Okay, so to me, because, and of course the antagonist of the franchise, which they've also done a really good job of not making a straight up villain, is the alien queen. So the female of one species versus the female of another species as the primary leads, bringing other forces in around them, has always, to me, that's just as important to the overall Aliens franchise as, you know, the acid blood and some of the other things. So there was no way I wasn't going to put that in there. And then to honor, you know, the original aliens, our lead in the story wants badly to be one of the warriors, but she's too small. And in this military situation, if you can't lift that shield, you're not part of the military. So kind of getting to emulate a little bit of Ripley's path with someone who actually wants to be a warrior in the first place. I was really intrigued by that as a storyteller, and hopefully it worked out.
I thought it did. I appreciated the female lead and the fact that she wasn't a, you know, like haha, I am in charge of everything and this is my, you know, like she actually had to not only overcome, you know, some of her, you know, the xenomorphs, but she also had to overcome some of the misogynistic aspects of their society, which is actually why I chose Dakatera, by the way, for our story, because they don't have that. So.
Yeah.
We've got a.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So I was just bringing up. We have a question in chat. If we're taking those now, Wolf.
Yeah, please. All right.
Please. So when can we play is asking, how long did you have to spend on historical research for this book?
Quite a bit of time. It's a lot of my work is modern day and tries to incorporate modern day governmental structures, societal structures, etc. And that requires shockingly massive amounts of research because there's so much stuff out there that we don't know on a day-to-day basis. Technology, military, government, trying to incorporate everything and make it work. This added Phalanx was an effort to get more into worlds where I've made up everything. So I get to control all that extraneous research, hopefully blocking out things I won't have to do. So I spend more time working on the plot and the characters, etc. But getting into ancient military tactics and the assumption that these tactics worked for a reason and changed the course of world history and power and would obviously bubble up again, you know, convergent evolution, if you will, and on other worlds. You know, the spear is something that's going to be invented by every sentient race. The shield, it's automatically that's going to come up at some point, and then you start to extrapolate from there, and you get to different tactics. So a lot of the research was on the tactics, primarily on that, and that was Mike Cole. Author Mike Cole was hugely beneficial for that. Answered all of my crazy questions. He is a military expert. Does some TV shows, great guy. But look up the MykeCole. Mike Cole writes great books.
Okay. And I think that research really shows in your book too, in Aliens Phalanx. You know, there's a lot of mention of all the different craftsmen and those sort of people that are necessary to keep these holds alive and running.
Trying to put some level of gritty realism on the story. You know, what is the smallest amount of people you can have in a self-sufficient, you know, trade-free place where there's very little farming, etc. So a lot of research into that, into those basic stuff, going back into prehistoric cultures, historic cultures. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. That's why there's several different, not just governmental system, but cultural models on Ataegina. It's not all just a uniform, all the women are subjugated and all the men are on top. It's like, well, yeah, that's at this hold, but then this hold over here, women are actually in charge, and at this hold, it's like a democracy. So trying to grab some of the world's ancient cultures and kind of nestle them in there as inspiration was fun.
I'm staying quiet for a few minutes. Thank you, by the way, Severian, because I would just keep going.
I have a question. So you've kind of have an idea of how we're obviously we're playing our aliens, the game by Free League Publishing, but taking your concepts and ideas. If you were to play, what kind of character do you think you would play?
I think the runners are the meat of the story, and there's clearly different. There you go. There's clearly different character classes available, if you will, but this is a magic-free concept, and it's trying to work. It uses real world science, real world physics. It doesn't go deep into those, but this is a place where if you dropped humans, this is the situation that would arise. So, the runner is the story on Ataegina. They're the ones who get out and move. They engage with other cultures. Most of the cultures are locked in. So I think it'd be hard to play something that wasn't a runner. Somebody's got to be part of the runner group, I would assume, to make it to play in this world.
Yeah, Wolf, you could probably explain that a little better. How we're doing.
Yeah, so we took the Alien RPG has careers, Colonial Marine, the pilots, medic, right? And basically what we did was we revamped all of their careers into what would be at Ataegina. So, for example, the Colonial Marine becomes the warrior.
Cool.
The medic becomes the doctor. And then there was a kid in there, which I know Diesel Shot is working on their version of the Year Zero system called Change Stars, where they changed the kid to the sneak. We changed the kid to the runner. And
Okay.
so all 5 of these folks are runners, but they have different sets of abilities. So it's kind of like, I just lost his name. The little spider. I can't remember his name. Little Spider. He becomes Little Spider though later.
Is that Crean? Maybe, I don't know.
There you go, Crean. Yeah. We have instead of a scientist, we have the explorer, right? And that's what Alistair is. So he has, more scientific abilities. So basically, everyone's still out there, but everybody's a runner. So everybody's on the surface, and and there's no magic, there's no guns. They have bows, they have crossbows. They don't have crossbows because those are reserved for the warriors. They have runner spears and their hidey suits, and that's it.
Yeah. The spears were the most delightful thing, I think, out of the research on the Alexandrian Phalanx. Before I started this, of course they break down. They're giant. They're like 9 to 12 feet long. But reading up in the process of how the different parts, now they couple them all together, and working that in with the runners was pretty fun. Like that's what I think makes Aliens Phalanx different. Is you take away the guns and everything changes immediately, and even how like the basic tenets of survival. And on Ataegina, it's silence is strength. It's you stay very, very still and control yourself because you have 0 chance of survival. That's when the book starts out. You got, if one sees you, that's it. You're gone. So there's no heroism. There's no, a great mythical warrior who can take out 3 with a single blow or anything like that. You're screwed. You're screwed if you see one.
I gotta say, when the spears actually do get used in your book, the way you described it is just so satisfying. The crunch through the carapace and that sort of stuff.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
it.
you. Enjoy that.
I hope we don't get that far. I think I just want to avoid the xenomorphs.
That's a true role player there. Like, no, I want to run, complete the mission.
I don't want to run.
I just
That'll
want to make
attract
it to
them.
our
I wanna
first
hide.
hold.
Right? Yeah, we already caused enough sound for that.
But
They haven't made it yet.
it's great. The concept of this as a role playing game is fascinating to me because there's the aliens, or there's the xenomorphs that are clearly in Phalanx, but it's mostly about the politics within the holds and between the holds. And you do have those authority figures that although they don't wear it on their sleeve, they have absolute power, absolute authority. And if you displease those in charge, you can just go away, and there's no justice for you or anything like that. So having that gravitas within the concept should make for some pretty good role playing.
If they make it, because right now, I don't know. Like they're on their way to Lament, by the way.
All right, that's gonna be great.
So, oh yeah, I'm sure the Margrave will be very happy to see them. Um, so I kind of moving just a little bit away from Alien Phalanx. I actually was wondering how did Dangerous Prey? How did that feel writing?
Well, I'm buddies with Jonathan Mayberry, and he was one of the editors for that, along with Brian Thomas Schmidt, if I recall correctly. And Jonathan's helped out my career a couple times, but he knows I'm just crazy for the Aliens franchise. So when he got it, I got a little Facebook DM like, "You can't talk about this, but I've got this. Would you want to be in on this opportunity?" And I'm like, yes, that would be absolutely fantastic. So that was the first time I worked with Steve Saffel at Titan as an editor. And I learned an enormous amount from that, because I had to write and say I want to write from the aliens point of view, and that had to get approved by Fox, and Fox approved it, and I was very excited. And then I did so much research for that, on silent military communication tactics, on insect communication, and just a ton of stuff. And I basically explained everything that wasn't explained in the movie Aliens. Like what does the secretions do? Why is there a hive structure? How do they communicate, etc. And we sent that in. We sent that into Fox, and Fox came back. I'm not sure who did the first pass at Fox, but I think there were like 13 or 14 things like, they can't do this. This doesn't work. This isn't. And I would write back, 1 hour, 10 minutes into Aliens, here's what happens, and listed everything, like a total flaming nerd, just like, actually, sir, this.
Excuse me.
Actually.
And I didn't have a full beard to flip up, but I would have flipped that beard up, I'll tell you. And then that level of just straight nerd geeky knowledge came back, and it took a while for them to respond. They finally respond, and very kindly explained, well, if you've explained all of this, and that takes away the mystery, and if we publish this, and this is the scientific way things work, other creators after you they have a lot less leeway with which to tell a story. And basically what Fox was saying is like, we want to keep a lot of the mystery about what these things are. So I was like, I never thought about it that way before. That's part of the terror of the aliens, is you're not entirely sure what they can or can't do, or what they will or won't do. So pulled all that stuff out of the story, and the story I got to write was still really fun. And then that story was one of the more popular ones in the collection, because it was so different, and that's what led to getting the Phalanx gig. I don't know if I answered the question. This is why I'm a novelist, because I just run off at the mouth, and I'm speaking the words.
This is like, yay! Like, this is the kind of stuff I want.
No, it's a really good point about the mystery of the xenomorphs, and not really knowing exactly how they communicate, or those sort of things, and it makes it all that much more terrifying, I think.
And I finally had to agree with I had to agree with 20th Century Fox, the reps on that. I, as a straight up fan, not a creator, consumer, not a creator of the franchise, I was always complaining about everything, frankly, because it was so close to being perfect. I wanted it to be perfect. I mean, when Aliens 3 came out, I was depressed for weeks. And
Yeah.
and then then getting some education from the producer side, and obviously they're doing something right. This is a 40-year-old franchise that's still cranking away, was really helpful. But the tricky part in anyone writing for this franchise is, you go back to, there is no magic. We are dealing with real physics, real bullets, real, spaceships and relativistic travel, etc., cold sleep, all these things. So you can't pull a Stephen King and all of a sudden here's a magic talisman, and then that changes the game. Like, that's the mystery in a Stephen King book, is it's mystical, and you have no idea what could come next and anything come next, and that's the framework of the story. So that's cool. In the Aliens world, you're not going to have sudden magical teleportation or holy swords or something like that. So you've got to have some element of mystery in there. Otherwise, it just becomes a chess game for the reader. Well, I know these things are true, so here's where the story's going. Having some level of some level of anything can happen in there, I think helps keep people on the edge of their seats.
There was a question from chat. Jski42 says, "Hey Scott, were any of the Ataegians based on junkies or other IRL people?"
Junkies are the quick backstory. The when I started giving away the podcast, my first podcast I gave away was the Earthcore audiobook, and it wasn't published anywhere, so I was just putting that out myself. And it was right about the time that 24 and Lost were out, so people were just again getting used to the idea of serialized weekly fiction and not having everything tie up episodically. And once I started with like 2 listeners in the first episode, and by the last episode we got to like, I don't know, 20, 30,000, somewhere in there. But people were driven crazy by here's the story, and it just stops, and you have to start up next week. So they started to call it Earthcrack and started to call themselves Junkies, waiting for their weekly hit of Earthcrack, and the name.
Amazing.
So my fan base is called the Junkies. And he's asking you, in the old days, I used to take actual junkie names and have various contests or participation and wind up putting them in books, but that's gotten too difficult to hold on to. So no, none of the characters in Ataegina are based on junkies. Most of my characters are an amalgamation of people I know, people I used to know, people in pop culture and other things, and just grab little bits and pieces here and there. And then gradually, the older I get, the more, I guess, the more grounded and realistic the characters get. So that gets in there as well.
Here's a question. So
Yes.
if a junkie's primarily into alien phalanx, do they smoke it with the crack pipe or with a glow pipe? But for,
Wow.
what is your
That's
actual
bad.
question for Scott though? What is your favorite? I know, like outside of Alien or Aliens, outside the primary 2.
Okay.
If you had to pick a favorite film, what would it be?
Oh, outside of Aliens, favorite film?
Outside of Alien or Aliens, but in the Alien franchise.
Predator, probably, right?
Or
That can't be
Alien-verse.
Predator either.
Predator was great.
Aw.
I really honestly can't answer that question, because that's like, the number 1 favorite band, AC/DC, the number 2 favorite band changes all the time. So favorite movies change on a regular basis. Old school comedies are a particular favorite of mine. It's hard to think. I mean, the original Star Wars, pretty fun, although I've gone back and seen that in a context where the music was played by a symphony orchestra and they took out all the sound effects. And like when the music was playing, it was beautiful. When there's no music, I'm like, this is not a very good movie. Break it down. Like, I watched this when I was a kid. And I love it, still love it, but it's overall not really that great of a movie. So I couldn't tie. I don't have an answer to that. I'll go with the Blues Brothers. It's the best I got at the
Oh,
moment.
that is actually a very good choice, though.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of a not so obscure horror movie that Lance Henriksen was in called Pumpkinhead, Demon of Revenge, and that's the same special effects guys that did Aliens, which is how I got into it. So that's my weird favorite horror movie is Pumpkinhead, Demon of Revenge. Not because I look like the Pumpkinhead either. Not that it's got nothing to do with that.
Great. I've got a question for Scott, unless anyone else here has one, because I've already asked a few.
Nope.
All right. So in this one is it's kind of more general about audiobooks, actually. So I find myself listening to audiobooks a lot more recently, and that's actually how I'm listening. I'm listening to Phalanx right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering how much back and forth do you have with I'm not sure if it's the publisher or what, but I guess picking the person that's going to be reading the book.
I have no control over picking the person that's reading the book. I believe that one is published by Blackstone Audio. With my own publishing, our small 2-person publishing company, we work with Ray Porter a lot, who is absolutely brilliant narrator, and one of my favorite actors. But when Blackstone emailed me and said, "Okay, we've got the audio rights. We'll let you know if we have any questions." And Bronson Pinchot is going to be doing the audiobook. And I had not been following Mr. Pinchot's career since way back in his sitcom days, and looked him up, and lo and behold, he's a big wig in the world of audiobook narration. He's incredible. He's very, very, very very good at it. He's wonderful. Now he has this very deep, deep voice that he didn't have when he was Balky on the TV show. But I sent Blackstone, replied to them and said, I am available 24/7 because I've had audiobooks go south when I'm not the one controlling it and people pronounce things wrong and get things wrong. So I did a whole pronunciation guide, recorded it, did one, and followed up, did a phonetic pronunciation guide in text, sent, I'm going to guess 5-6 pages worth of information on here. If you want it to be true to the book, here's the things you got to get right. There's a reason things are pronounced this way. This is important. And then like everything else, obviously let the actor and director have their interpretation because that's what they're paid to do. And they wrote back and was like, well, you know, would you mind if Bronson reached out to you ever? And I'm like, no, that's totally cool. And he wound up being the coolest cat. He was really, really invested in the characters. I think he really enjoyed the book. And while he was in the 2 weeks, week or 2 weeks, whatever he was in the studio, we were texting back and forth all the time. So it was a wonderful experience. He had tons of deep questions like, okay, here's what I can read, but go back. Why is Cream like this? Why is Ahalia like this? And I would explain backstory stuff that's not in the book, and that helped him with his performance. So it was great. I think the Aliens Phalanx audiobook is fantastic, and everybody should check it out. He killed it.
Yeah, I'm really loving
I'll definitely
it.
check it out now.
Yeah.
That answers my follow-up question because I was also going to ask you if you had any communication back and forth with the narrator about the way the characters themselves speak. So
as I'm doing more books that are like, we've been putting out our own books for a while, and that works great for us. When I go back to doing books for other publishing houses, if I get that email that says, Bronson's going to be doing the audiobook, I'll be like, okay, that's great. we know this is going to get done correctly and with passion and talent. It's going to be awesome.
I have a small follow-up question, if I may. It's very small. What inspirations did you take? It's completely related to this last question. What inspirations did you take for the linguistics of the setting Ataegina? Because we looked them over and like we've got names like Paul, we've got an Iberian name like Ataegina. Very interesting. I'm a huge language buff. I love that stuff.
Well, if you're stick with the book until the end, and I don't know if you guys are on a moratorium from reading and listening while you're role playing, but that is a question that is explained in context in the story, and I can't spoil it for you.
There you go.
It's true. By the way, just as a note, the ending, if you guys make it past, your first run, will be different than the book. So you have incentive to.
We got a strong group. Our diplomat's doing all the work right now.
blood and water, baby.
Blood and water.
the absolute no one takes him serious kid, just fucking murking left and right.
I gotta say one thing before I let other people. I'm really kind of disappointed that Bronson called you, and whenever he asked if he could do it or if he could talk to you, you said you didn't say don't be ridiculous. Like that is completely. I'm just sad.
I never brought that up. I never meant. I was like, I tried to put myself in, like, at one point, this dude was on the #1 sitcom in the world, right? And a lot of people know him only as that character. So I was very careful to find my center before I would chat with him or text with him to make sure that didn't randomly slip in. As a child of the 80s, it didn't randomly slip into the text or conversation. I'm like, he doesn't want to hear this from me.
that was like 20 years ago, man. Can you not?
Yeah.
It's crazy to talk to him, man, because his voice, like, you listen to the audiobook and like, he's an actor with a huge vocal range and a huge range of, pro actors are pro actors for a reason, and that dude can do anything in the drop of a hat. And when you talk to him, it's not even in the same ballpark as Balky, and that always comes as a shock the first time I think you get a chance to talk to an actor who's played a role, and you're like, oh, okay, you're just a regular person too. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I always cracks me up whenever you talk to, or not talk to, because I've never been able to. This is like my first time actually being able to talk to somebody like that is famous, and it's very interesting for me. But the when you hear people like Hugh Lowry like talk, right? You after seeing House, and then all of a sudden that accent comes out, and it's like, what?
always a trip. And then there was that run, I think in the early aughts or whatever, where every young male action adventure lead was played by an Australian guy and playing part of an American. So there was that constant sharing of like when you hear him talk on the red carpet, you're like, what? Whoa, you're good at your job, dude. I had no idea. You're good at your job.
Like Jason Isaacs, same thing. Carl Urban,
Same
thing. The change is just outrageous.
Yeah, Carl Urban. I've been fortunate enough to meet him in person on a book tour in Australia, and what a nice guy, really nice guy. But yeah, when you first have that conversation, you're like, it's very weird, very weird. The best Judge Dredd ever is Judge Dredd. Crushed. What a great movie that is. That's my favorite movie now, other than Aliens. Judge Dredd. I've just decided.
Wow, you're not just saying that because.
That's why it's Judge Wolf, by the way. The other game that we play is a Judge Dredd game, and I was getting ready to ask you, if do you think that there is any psychic link with the xenomorphs, or if the xenomorphs were able to get a hold of a psychic? Not saying that's going to happen in our Judge Dredd game or anything,
Right.
but do you think that they could have psychic powers themselves?
Well, there's some degree of very rapid nonverbal communication. It could be auditory. My theory when I was doing Dangerous Prey was that the long head is like Diplodocus, I think it is way back when, dinosaurs, that is used to generate low subsonics, and those are ideal for penetrating cavernous underground type situations. So when you combine long head and the hive and the whole underground thing, I'm like, well, that's how they do it, with the tapping and clicking and the hissing, and that's all language. And the subsonics are, to me, it was obvious that was the original intention of Geiger, which I think is just, I'm writing that in after the fact and interpreting something that isn't there. But to answer your question, there is some degree of telepathy. There's clearly groupthink and hive mind, and pretty much all iterations of the xenomorph creation take a lot from eusocial insect organizations and the silent communication that goes on there, and the instinctive flocking pack attack, like the ants swarming to take out an invader, things of that nature. So that, to me, I mean, maybe I'm taking the question too far, but that to me is, if you've got behavior hardwired into a group organism that lets them act immediately as multiple cells of a single thing, then that is, to me, that's a kind of practical functioning telepathy, which would be one of those medium type things. What would they be thinking about? I don't know. I tried to get into that in Dangerous Game, but they are, the best. Bill Paxton's line, what do you mean they cut the power, man? They're animals. Well, they're not human intelligence, but they're clearly a pretty advanced eusocial hive. So who knows how they're doing that?
Sev, you got the. There's 2 questions in the chat.
Go for it.
So our first question is from Malcolm Fett for Life. I hope I pronounced that right. Says, hey guys, so question for Scott. When thinking about writing future Alien material, does the material need to be reviewed by any canon police?
Well, if you're just writing it as fan fiction, which is a fantastic way to get into it and just write, and you get better at writing by writing. So if there's something that fires you up fan fiction wise, you go for that and write it. Then you don't need canon police there. If you are aspiring to write actually within the franchise, that is going to be very difficult to do now because Marvel has bought the franchise. I know that Titan Publishing holds on to the franchise rights in the short term, but I've been writing for 15 years, #1 New York Times bestseller. I can't get Marvel to return an email. So, what I mean? It's like that's very difficult upper echelon to crack. So you really have to be more seasoned in the marketplace if you want a shot at that, I think. Canon wise though, it's, that as an Aliens fan, trying to keep things canon is really difficult because that mystery part of it, every time somebody comes in, things change a little bit. So I think that you should just free yourself up from that and pick and choose. Pick the parts you like. If you're thinking about writing this for business reasons and want to get paid to write in that world, you need to reach out to Titan Publishing and Marvel. I don't know who now. Good luck.
All right. And we have a second question here from KSM Cardle. Scott, we know you did some modules for the Champions RPG. Is there one of your series that you would like to see turned into an RPG? Iron Crown Enterprises, Hero Games used to put out, I think they still do, put out a role-playing game called Champions, where it's a superhero role-playing game, which was awesome back in the day. We played hundreds of hours of that thing. It was fantastic. And my first published writing was in White Wolf, a little adventure called Seedshire. And then I started to move into writing other role-playing games and was fortunate enough to be able to write for Don Dennis over at Iron Crown. And my favorite group was called The Pack. And it was a bunch of street level supervillain, superhero, kind of in the Daredevil mode, where they were all named after dog breeds. So Mongrel was the leader. Doberman and Rottweiler were two of the great ones. Hellhound, technically that's a dog, so that was in there. and I think I'm forgetting one. A Nightwolf, I think, was the other, something like that. But they were kind of that mid '80s, late '80s, semi tongue in cheek. Wow, all of our supervillains are all named after this one thing. What a weird coincidence, type groups. But they were very, very fun. That would be the one I would write if I got a chance.
Oh my god, amazing! I love it.
Should write this, what we're doing for Free League Publishing. I mean, you obviously already have the background knowledge.
Yeah. This would be, whoever's watching is like asking about continuity. If you are doing fan fiction, keep watching this role playing session as it goes on and novelize that. That's the way to break into the business is right.
The right stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a reminder for anyone that maybe just joined chat, we're taking more questions for Scott. So
yep, ask away if you're out there. Happy to answer anything. So how long will this adventure run? Like, do you know how many sessions it'll go?
The goal originally was to be 3 sessions, but the way it's kind of running, it might be more. I still have to talk to the runner of the free, because our channel, so there's 4 of us that have a channel called Tabletop Anthologies, which is twitch.tv/Tabletop Anthologies, and then Lee and Pat are from Diesel Shot. We do crossovers with them, so twitch.tv/Diesel Shot. And we came up with this, and we're going through the Free League channel, which is Matt has been gracious enough to allow us to do. And we basically signed up for three shows of around 2 to 3 hours each. But the way it's going, unless they die, it could be longer. So we don't know. Right now, it's scheduled for this week and next. It could be longer.
Sweet.
I have a feeling we're gonna die soon, though.
Rude.
I mean, it might happen today.
Blood and water.
It's not the kind of campaign where you're going to survive repeatedly and keep leveling up. It's not.
No.
Yeah, we're not
You'll
going
fall
to
in love with your character.
We're not going to find a +1 pulse rifle of Xeno Slaughter, and
I mean, if the
Good
UPP
eye.
shows up, maybe, right?
Oh, you are trying to shoehorn that song in.
I
Anyway,
swear, if I gotta put that song into there.
we'll play it at the end. don't worry.
We
Yeah.
played a fucking a UPP setup. Actually, a module written by someone else. The only time I did that, and I found a trap remix of the USSR's anthem, and like it hasn't been out of Judge Wolf's head since I put that on in the background.
It's annoying.
While,
It's really
while fighting
annoying.
a weird tomato monster in the hull of a garden ship.
That was in June.
So, how you just mentioned like writing to break into. So like I've been working on my own thing, and now I actually have a little bit of time in my life that I would love to write. So I'm old, right? Like I need a walker now.
Yep.
Is it too late, and if not, what do you think? What would be the way to go about it?
Well, I have a 5-episode series over on YouTube, which you can look for. So You Want to Be a Writer. Just put in Scott Sigler, So You Want to Be a Writer. And the first episode of that is how to write your first novel. And if you get better at everything by doing it, and writing a novel, if you haven't done it before, is a lot of people will try to write one, get somewhere in the middle, get confused, get stuck, and and walk away from it, then go start another one. So the first episode, So You Want to Be a Writer, is about write a bad book. When you start with your first novel, you start writing and it's a ghost story and you get stuck. Peter Venkman walks in. It doesn't matter. You're just writing. The goal is to keep going and keep writing a certain amount of copy every day until you get to 70, 80,000 words and the book ends, because there's a lot of power in learning how to finish a book. A book is a very long, onerous process. There's not a recipe. Things change in the middle while you're doing it, and it can be a very frustrating, depressing process after you've put in hundreds of hours of work. You're like, well, that doesn't work. I have to throw this stuff out. So training your brain that there is an end to this, you can finish, you've done it before, is really the first step. Because that, when you write your second book, which is your first good book, you'll get a quarter in, halfway through, and get completely dejected because something's not working or you're not good enough, something along those lines. But in the back of your head, you're like, I can finish this. And that helps you get through that spot where a lot of other people will drop out and not follow through. So, and then once you've done the first one, just keep writing them. I wrote 5 full novels and had somewhere in the ballpark of 130 rejection letters stacked up or pinned on the wall before I actually wound up breaking through. So, and broke through because I started giving my stuff away as a free podcast because I couldn't find the right connection in publishing. So you may be old and assume it's at least a 5-year project, more like a 10-year project to get into the market. And if you keep that in your head, then it becomes much more achievable, and you're able to roll with the bumps a little bit better.
That makes sense.
There was
we
Go,
have
you got it,
another
Seth?
question, and yep, I have
Thank you.
another question for you, Scott, from the chat.
Okay.
And for chat, any questions? Just keep in mind, try and keep everything spoiler free.
Right.
So this is from CD Casey. And I'll interject my own little opinion there. Try to keep your answer spoiler free if you can. Were the plants Kreen found based on anything, or just a new invention?
Yeah, we won't talk too much about it, but I came up with flora and fauna of Ataegina. Of course, most of the fauna is gone for obvious reasons, and the flora and what is left and what survives in that ecosystem were fairly carefully thought out. But no, that I to do this and my series Infected, which is Infected Contagious Pandemic, which is some really hardcore horror, not for the faint of heart. Even worse than Aliens Phalanx, if you've got that in there. Did a lot of research on parasitology and found out amazing, wonderful things, like 2/3 of the species on this planet are parasites. So it is the most successful survival strategy on planet Earth is to be a parasite. But watching, the evolutionary battle between host and parasite and how things can change with certain shifts in biochemistry or, different things along that nature, that factored into coming up with the flora of Ataegina and figuring out how this X factor could potentially make for a good story. It's really hard to talk about. You can't spoil it.
I know.
Right, yeah. And the flora and fauna is definitely kind of complex, and I guess maybe the better word is very rich in the Phalanx setting, I feel. And how did you go about doing all of that? I guess more exactly, my question is, as you're doing all your research for the book, at what point do you sit down and just go through trying to come up with all that flora and fauna? How do you integrate that into the rest of the world?
Well, I've been doing this for a while, and when I started out, research, I would do nothing but research and would even get in the way of writing, and going really, really deep into subjects and just reams of notes. And then when you write the book, I would try and force a lot of that research into the book where it didn't belong. You know, I have a book called Ancestor, which is a kind of a monsters on an island story set in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and there is a converted B7, a bomber, big old bomber, one of the nukes, and they convert that in for a different purpose, and the goal is keep it flying. So I don't know how much research on battery storage and all, and I finally put a flywheel in the plane, so if all power goes out, the flywheel's still working with the generator. And it was like 5 pages of stuff on all this, because I wanted, without knowing it, I was trying to show off how much research I had done. And when it came back from the publisher, there were just red X's through all 5 pages, and he like circled one paragraph. And I'm like, that's literally like 50, 60 hours of my life that you just red X'd out. He's like, it doesn't matter to the story. Just, you need this. They have a flywheel. People want to look it up, they'll look it up. I'm like, God damn it. So that taught me, to answer your question, don't do research until the plot is framed out. Because the stories are about characters, how they interact, how they deal with things, and the relationships between them. So now I'll go through and kind of frame it out, then go back like, okay, well, they're dealing with this lack of meat and they can't farm, and here's these things, and then sort of backfill in the scientific knowledge and the research from there. So now what I try to do is when I get to a point where I need to research for a book, there's a specific spot that's going in the book, and I've got a better knack after all these years now of like, here's what people need to know. We need to make this an actual real thing. And then if they want to go look it up, they will pursue that on their own. So very targeted research to do all the flora and fauna.
It's a really good point. And I can definitely relate to some of that. Running tabletop games, more inexperienced GMs might go out there and just research,
yeah.
come up with all these things, these areas that your players might go to, and then they never go to those areas. So it's all that time is just wasted.
Yeah.
I definitely relate to that.
We used to play a game called Danger International, which was kind of a spies role-playing game by Iron Crown. And the amount of research I did into particular kinds of firearms and where they're made, and like using all this stuff as clues, and found out that my players, they just wanted to shoot stuff. They didn't give a damn about any of that. And like, so that was one of the early things, like, oh, that was all wasted time. She's just giving them us, here's Saturday Night Special, go crazy.
That's making me twitchy.
Twitchy?
I agree.
Like the channel rock?
Wow, it's already 9. Scott, I would love to keep you here every hour of this entire session. But I know that you dedicated a half hour, and we've already taken an hour of your time. I don't know if there's anything else that we can bug you with right now.
Well, I hope you guys enjoy the game quite a lot. When you're done with the game, go check out the book. I think it sounds like everybody in this group would really enjoy the story, especially after they've actually. You're the first people to set foot on Ataegina other than me. So I hope you have a great time.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you so much.
All the fucking
I
side
just
details
wanna-
are coming out. I love the flora and fauna.
Cool.
I love the flora and fauna too. That's actually been one of my hugest things. I'm such a geek for xenobiology. I incorporate it in all of my shit. I
Great.
love what you've done with the place.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did a write up for them that describes what carpentine powder is, what plantain fruit is, what the flowers, and I gotta ask one more question though as a GM. What are the people of Keflin like?
I'm not sure I captured this all that well in the book, but they are, this is a subsistence culture that is actively failing. So these are, they all know there was a great empire at one point that their ancestors were a part of, but most of them are young enough that they've never seen that. So this is, a lot of the apocalyptic movies or the Earth taken over by robot movies. You find that underground layer where there's all these dirty, smelly people huddled around a can of Sterno and like one sardine that they're splitting up 5 ways. That's kind of the feel, and they try to have their religion and their culture and honor their culture, but for the most part, these are people up borderline starvation. Most of them never see sunlight Most of them have never been outside at all. And so you can imagine it's probably a really depressing place. And the last thing I'll say about it is this is a theme that comes out in a lot of my work, particularly a book called Nocturnal, which is a monster story set in San Francisco, is that the old guard gets to be the old guard for a reason. The people who wind up Peter Principling up to a command position or actively took a role to get their people there tend to have got there in a culture that's not brand new by following the rules, obeying the laws, etc. And it's always the youth who are, rebellious and like, why do we do things? We've always done things this way. We don't have to do it just because we've always done it this way. And in my books, that's always a really dangerous concept. So, being a rebellious 15-year-old in America and not wanting to go to school is one thing. Being naturally rebellious on Ataegina and in Keflan, where if you don't follow the rules, your ass is going to get eaten, is another entirely. So the youth is somewhat optimistic, trying to change things, but it's a very depressing world, and there's no good options, and everyone sort of knows that humanity's on its way out.
Thank you.
What I'm hearing is vitamin D deficiency.
Yeah. Yep. These also aren't what makes it a more interesting place from a fantasy perspective. This is basically a fantasy novel. Is they no hold can grow all the stuff and produce all the stuff they need to keep people alive. That's the different vitamins, the different nutrients. They have to have some degree of trade involved, and that's where the runners come from in the first place. So there's also that constant fear in this world where if we lose our trade route to this one hold that only 3 or 4 people can traverse every 3 or 4 months, then we're going to be dead within months. So that stress is added on top of everything else. I wouldn't really want to live there. It doesn't sound like fun.
Well, I just want to once again thank you so very much for joining us this morning and giving some of your time. I know we took up quite a bit of it, and I really appreciate you answering all our questions. In the chat, I do want to point out that we have Scott's website up where his podcasts are. Every Sunday, new podcast going through his books, 20 minutes. There's serials. There we go. I would like to note that I've been looking for other books to read. And now I will officially be a junkie. Now that I know that that's a term, so we'll be joining that.
That's gonna be on my next audiobook for sure.
Yep. Scott's Twitch is up in the chat, and once again, thank you so freaking much for joining us. And you are more than welcome to join us anytime that you need to step away from the GM mantle and actually pick up the player mantle for a little bit.
Hopefully there'll be some of that in the future. I'm getting the twitches again to go role play it a little bit. But thank you guys for having me on. I hope you have a wonderful time with it.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna go ahead and go to a Be Right Back screen. We'll be back in 5 minutes to pick up our Alien RPG Ataegina game, which takes place in Scott's world of Alien Phalanx. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Will the runners make it?
Probably not.
I'm gonna run
Probably not.
to the bathroom.